Hey everybody, welcome to Wednesday. I'm going to apologize first of all for yesterday mixing up those Grand Theft Auto games. I mixed up Grand Theft Auto 3 and San Andreas. I am getting just knackered by allergies. Normally I have like the pollen thing in May, June, and I'm on like puffers up the wazoo and nasal sprays, and you can see my nose is kind of red. And I have two really bad months where both the itchy eyes and the itchy skin and the asthma and all that stuff really just flatten me, and then it eases because spring got started so late this year. It's all hitting me at once, and I'm not doing well, hence the I'm gonna stumble on a lot of words. I'm finding I'm combining words together into very strange combinations. I'm not sure how it works that way, but I'm having real issues. And then I accidentally drank a cranberry juice that had stevia in it, or stevia. I don't know how it's pronounced. All I know is I'm really freaking allergic to that stuff. And I only had like 3 sips before I realized this tastes funny. And then recheck the label because I did look to see if it said light or diet or anything like that. It didn't. But then in the bottom, in print that's easy to see, easy to miss, it says sweetened with stevia. And so I'm like, shoot. So I'm really itchy right now, and I was itchy last night during Twitch. So forgive me for the stumbles. I am doing my best. See, now I'm thinking about it. So I'm like, it gets me worse in heated areas. So like on my sides, and then I'm wearing like no sleeves because it gets less itchy. Otherwise in here, it's like super itchy. Anyway, not your problem. So this sort of stuff, I have been in increasing delays with Boss Fight because of this and other reasons. I've been detailing them for the patrons. If you want to become a patron, a lot of people have lately. I appreciate the new signups. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. It helps a bunch. But that's not what we're talking about today. Though it does involve money. We're sort of taking a break from Last of Us 2 stuff. Though it does sort of tie into my overall opinions about how sort of politics and social justice intersect with media. And where the various lines are. People who have found this channel recently may not know that I was on Canadian TV before I started doing YouTube. I worked in talk radio. I worked in a youth music channel as a producer, not on camera. On camera, it was comedy. Yeah, I have a pretty extensive career. I was a documentarian. I've worked in a ton of forms of media. And so I've had the opportunity of dealing with advertisers in a lot of different ways. And one thing I've learned about dealing with advertisers, they may be good people as individuals. It is not their job to be good people. It is their job to sell you products. And often they are products that you do not actually need in any universe. Nobody needs Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola is nothing but bad for you. Coca-Cola is not making the world any better through its products. You know what I mean? They're contributing to the obesity epidemic and so on and so forth. Now, Coca-Cola is never going to sponsor me. Why? Because advertisers don't like criticism. And this is sort of where I'm going with this. The stop hate for profit hashtag. It's interesting because this tends to be where the summer tends to be when these sort of online fights, it almost came out online farts. Maybe that was a Freudian slip. I told you I was going to mess this up. These advertiser flights from the internet tend to happen in summer. And I suspect in part that is because the eyeballs decline on social media in the summer. Now, it's a little different this summer, but because there aren't like the major Hollywood movies, but this summer there are things like streaming services, Disney Plus, Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, CBS All Access, Peacock. And I did notice, and this is what made it go ding, ding, ding in my head, Unilever, after announcing they were halting ads on Facebook, and I believe also all social media except YouTube, they're sponsoring Peacock. And I'm wondering if part of this shift from Facebook is not a shift from Facebook. It's a shift to digital streaming platforms that are more predictable. The issue with social media companies, and I include YouTube in this one just because it's user-generated content, your ads can appear next to anything. And no matter how much they police those spaces, stuff slips through. Now, there are ways of sort of getting people to earn the right to run ads through various things that can cut down on the likelihood of that, but it's going to happen. And that's what a lot of people like about social media. That's something brands have to sort of accept when they advertise on social media. I also don't think anybody who's arguing in good faith believes that, Coca-Cola, for instance, really supports, sympathy for terrorist groups. Just saying. I think most people, despite the erosion of critical thinking in our society, I think most people realize that the ads that run in front of my videos, anything else, they don't endorse what I'm doing. It's just programmatic, right? So there's an element of unnecessary skittishness. I think they're more worried about parents than anything else. But this Stop Hate for Profit campaign has been really effective in terms of a boycott. Most boycotts don't work. This one is actually influencing Facebook's behavior. I don't think in meaningful ways. I think Facebook is trying to do as little as possible. And the reasons why, I'm not entirely sure. Facebook has been dumb on this issue for quite some time. Now, I should probably declare my own opinions on this, just, cards on the table. A lot of you guys know that I'm very progressive in my politics. I also really don't like censorship or sort of de facto censorship. I don't like demonetization of... I think we are in an age where the fact that sex is considered worse than violence in a lot of ways is actually harmful to childhood development. I don't think any child under the age of 12 or 13 should be surfing social media without parental supervision to begin with. I don't think kids should be watching television without parental supervision at that age, just because there is too much adult content on 24 hours a day. There are videos of people kneeling on people's necks on the news. These are the times we live in. It's important that people see, but DVDs and kid-friendly streaming services and things like that are there for a reason. You have to supervise kids' media consumption. Once kids hit 12 or 13, they're going to be curious about the opposite sex or the same sex or whatever. They're going to be curious about something. Even asexual people are curious about sex. They just don't necessarily partake in it all the time. But, the idea that you can stop that curiosity, I think, is absurd. I think there's way too much violence in stuff that is considered okay for kids. I thought the Marvel movies were getting way too brutal for a while there, and still getting a PG rating, And it's not that I think it's going to turn kids into killers. I just think it's going to, frighten kids and scare kids. And it just shows how messed up and arbitrary what we consider appropriate and not is, right? Now, that being said, do I think that these things should be censored? No, I don't. I think people should be given more information so that they can select the content that is appropriate for them. Of course, this is where advertisers come in with deceptive marketing practices and copyright strikes and content claims and all that stuff, deliberately not giving people information to make a truly informed choice about what media they consume. That's what I think we need to be working towards. People being able to make informed decisions for themselves and their children, not Silicon Valley companies and algorithms doing it for them. And YouTube and Facebook both try to do it for them to a certain degree. And I know that's because advertisers think parents want that. But just because, the Karens of the world scream for the manager, that doesn't make it ethical or right. It doesn't make it a decision based in science. Oh, but advertising's not really based on science. Advertising's based on persuasion. And yes, there are certain psychological elements to persuasion, but it's not, they claim it's numbers. But there are intangibles to advertising. We all know the number of YouTubers who've got into trouble and lost sponsors. And, on an individual level, I think that's totally fair. That is a direct endorsement of the content. If you've got paid advertising on your videos, that's a different thing. I also think that media platforms, any business, reserving the right to refuse service to anyone, that is a fair thing. We need to keep that because it just keeps things way simpler, right? We're in this age where we're like, the cops are doing too much, so people should just be able to say, I'm not selling to you, instead of having to call the police and involve, officials of some level of government to settle that dispute. I am very pro LGBTQ2IA plus blah, blah, blah rights. I agree with the Supreme Court saying that that bakery, if they don't want to bake a cake for someone because their religious opinions are like 50 years out of date, they should be able to do that. It's a private business. It's an opportunity for somebody else to open up a more inclusive, diverse company in the same neighborhood and let the market sort it out. Now, that being said, Facebook has been utterly ridiculous in how they've handled this. Facebook could have cruised along with the we're not a publisher, we're a platform nudge wink. Except that when you submit ads, it does have an approval process. And so that meant they were actively approving misinformation and hate speech. The minute you have an approval process for something like that, you are the publisher of that content and you are responsible for that content. And the fact that Mark Zuckerberg just said we're not going to allow hate speech in our advertising, I cannot believe that's right. I read that in an article just now that Facebook is now not going to allow hate speech in its advertising. the fact that they were to begin with, and posts from politicians, apparently, I can't believe they needed a shove there. Because that's just not just somebody like posting their opinions, right? That's something they're actually taking money to direct at certain people. That's ridiculous. And I mean, I think Twitter's been really, really wishy-washy with its rules. I think YouTube doesn't have its you-know-what together. And Instagram allows way too much bullying of everybody. But that is so above and beyond, like, what? This was inevitable that they were gonna get into trouble. It's just not a smart business practice to do that. Now, that being said, I do not believe that companies like Verizon, Unilever, Coca-Cola, who else? Denny's, Hershey's, Honda, Ben & Jerry's. There's quite a few companies participating in this hashtag Stop Hate for Profit campaign. Now, it could be that these companies are all just spooked. It could be that the free advertising they get from participating in this campaign, they're taking a bit of a gamble that this is gonna be a better return on investment because they pay nothing for this and they actually save some money. They're getting all this free advertising by not giving money to Facebook. But there's also much more cynical things going on here. I think this was cover for a bunch of brands that realized they weren't getting effective bang for their buck out of social media marketing. And this was a way to take a stand, and, it was just the right time to bow out. Now, these companies are only pausing for like a month. But think about when they're pausing. They're pausing when people don't have a lot of money anyway, because everybody's getting whacked by COVID. It doesn't really matter who you are. If you're working at a grocery store, you're freaking exhausted. And okay, maybe you've been getting hazard pay for a while, but that stopped now and you're too exhausted to do things like shop for stuff you don't need on the internet. Some people enjoy retail therapy, but I know there's stuff that's like, oh, I should order that. I'm too tired. It's people are not thinking, let's go out and shop right now. They're thinking, what do I have to do so I don't die? And advertisers wisely are easing up on the advertising because they don't want a negative impression being formed. Advertisers are also very jittery. That many advertisers play it very, very, very safe. And you're like, what? Yeah, sometimes they play it so safe that they end up with bets that were not safe at all, like PewDiePie. They looked at him and thought, here's a clean-cut guy. They didn't actually look into the nature of his content. They saw his numbers. They saw the way he looked. If you notice that influencers like Ninja and PewDiePie and people like that, they all look kind of similar. That blonde, clean-cut, all-American boy. Ninja makes his hair weird colors, but advertisers love that. They love that, oh, this is like a boy band. We get that. That's good and safe. Of course, the content turned out not to be. But advertising is this weird mix of cynicism and risk aversion because of the clients. Because the clients are paying these advertising companies a lot of money and expecting a return on investment. And advertising tends to be way more cookie cutter than you think it is, even with all the innovation that comes in. You get 2 to 3 really innovative ad campaigns per year. Everything else is cookie cutter marketing 101, right? And so companies won't make, like the Denny's really got ding, 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 that pops up. But Best Buy, HP, things like that too. What we learned in the whole Gamergate controversy with the ad stuff there was that instead of going, oh, I'm going to support this company or this company, I'm going to support this personality, the companies went, no matter what we decide here, somebody's going to hate us, so the only winning move is not to play. And I suspect that's what a lot of these advertising agencies are doing. They're going to safe bets like Peacock and CBS All Access because that's just reruns of network TV shows. And they're going, we don't know what's going to piss somebody off, so we're just backing off. And they're looking at the numbers, they're looking at the opinion polling, and the majority of people are either not really paying attention to this stuff or they support more curation, more rules on our online content. And this is one of the things that makes me a little bit concerned, because if you go out and you stand on a street corner and you speak your mind, that's protected speech or in a public place, as long as you're not, inciting to riot or anything like that. That's a public place. You have the right to your views and to communicate those views and not be persecuted by the government. But as I speak to you through YouTube, as I speak, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, these are not public spaces. These are corporatized, monetized spaces. And we have to accept that our main methods of communication right now, unless you're like me and try to get more and more people onto Telegram, where it's a series of private communications as opposed to this kind of stuff, you are not protected by free speech protections because companies reserve the right to refuse service to everyone. This is concerning. And I understand why people who are, proponents of free speech like myself, or even more, pedantic about it, just no limits at all, are really concerned about the seeming... There are blurred lines between truly hateful opinions and just unpopular opinions. And too much, it's bigotry because I say it so. And I understand why people are concerned about that, because I've spoken to a lot of people over the last little bit who are really afraid of getting canceled because they didn't get the memo that a certain terminology is not okay anymore, and they didn't mean anything by it, and they just made a mistake. And then instead of being able to correct the mistake and just say, hey, I didn't know, they're going to be labeled some sort of bigot and get canceled. And it's more complicated than that. But I can understand these fears because people don't understand kind of the machinations behind the scenes with this stuff. And the thing I find kind of interesting is that, this campaign is targeted at Facebook, which let's be totally honest here. Places like the ADL have been concerned about Facebook for a very, very, very long time. Not because of random people spouting stupid crap. It's because of the methodical, targeted campaigns to interfere with politics that Facebook has been like ground zero for. And that's a much bigger discussion of what we do about the quality of our media. And the truth is that the only way to get more quality media is if someone is willing to pay for solid content that may get less traffic, but it's solid content. It's not services that just chase outrage and then go further and further and further down the rabbit hole. And then suddenly, all of a sudden, somebody goes, why? When did they become like this? It's been a slow creep, right? They just chase that traffic. There's got to be a balance of quality as well as quantity in terms of content. I'm old enough to remember when the news got deregulated. When at some point back in the day, news was considered a condition of license, a public service that networks had to provide. You had the you had the 6 o'clock news and you had the 11 o'clock news, and some people had the 5 o'clock news, but you couldn't run ads during the news. It was considered a public service. If you wanted to make money on everything else, you had to provide news programming. You had to inform people. I believe it was Reagan that deregulated the news in the US, and that led to the rise of CNN and MSNBC and Fox News and all that stuff, for-profit 24-hour cable news services. And once it's for profit, and this is why I find it so strange that advertisers will not advertise politicized content on the internet, but they will pile it into cable news. The minute you do that, you are chasing eyeballs. Ratings matter. Instead of it being the trust of the people who watch you mattering. I'm glad there are still some journalists who care very much about getting it right. They are out there. I know a lot of you don't believe me about that, but they are out there. But we gotta somehow get back to that. And that's just gonna be people voting with their eyeballs, voting with their pocketbooks, direct funding for things like Patreon. And yeah, nobody's going to get super rich off of Patreon. Okay, Patreon. But you can make a living. You can eke it out. And for people who really do care about quality control, that'll be enough for us. Like, yeah, would we like to make a lot more money? Sure. But as long as we can pay our bills, that's what really matters. And we can't rely on these brands that, quite frankly, should have been doing the things they're doing now a long time ago. They knew Facebook was a problem 2 months ago. They knew what they were doing 2 months ago, but they held their nose and pumped their money in. And now all of a sudden, oh no, they're standing with, stop hate for profit. And the fact that Facebook didn't get objectively worse, they're the same company they were 2-3 months ago. And these companies are just pulling their products now. This is why I believe the reason they're really pulling their money isn't about this boycott. This boycott gave them an excuse to either get out temporarily when they think there's going to be a small return on investment. I mean, who the hell's buying durable goods at Best Buy now? Microsoft's got a new console coming out in the fall, but for summer, what are they really advertising? Really nothing. They're running Cyberpunk ads. The Xbox brand is at the end of Cyberpunk. I mean, they're pushing TV on that. They're going direct to YouTube. They don't necessarily need a Facebook campaign for that. And I mean, Magnolia Pictures? No, nobody's going to the movies. I don't think Ben & Jerry needs to advertise ice cream right now because everyone is comfort eating. Hershey's the same. Coca-Cola the same. Starbucks, I know people who the only reason they leave the house is to go to Starbucks, right? They're Clorox does not need to advertise right now. Clorox can't keep their products in stores. The reason these advertisers are dropping their ads right now is not because of some sincere commitment to social change and social justice. The reason they are dropping their ads right now is it makes good business sense, and they have found a way to do it without seeming cynical. That is my belief. I have presented my evidence for this. That does not mean that the Stop Hate for Profit campaign is not a good thing. If it gets Facebook to change their practices for the good, awesome. What it does mean is we should not be cheering these companies for doing this. We should cheer these companies when they actually start taking risks to directly fund creators and media companies who do things that are responsible as well as entertaining. When they start creating funds for that, that's when you know they're really, really taking that seriously. Because the only good that brings is a better quality of product. Yeah, they can put their ads on it, but they're not going to get huge numbers right away. But they have the money. They could do that outreach if they really wanted to even the scales regarding, diversity and inclusion and all that stuff. They have to start putting money into systems instead of just pulling money out of systems and putting them into equally, multinational corporation systems. Does that make sense? Let me know what you think, because Feedback Friday is Friday. I want your comments. We're probably going to end up talking about Last of Us 2 some more because of all the comments from the previous videos and a surprising amount of agreement. I thought I was going to take a lot more crap for some of this stuff, but surprising amount. Anyway, Feedback Friday, give us your comments. And if you want Thursday content, Patreons get Thursday content. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. Thanks for watching.